Okay, we're going to take a look at servicing the front disc brakes. Drove the vehicle up on the alignment rack, which is a little different type of lift. It's actually a drive-on lift. Just going to show you real quick how to lift the vehicle up. So you're going to pull the vehicle up until basically the front wheel is in that indented area, and you want to make sure the vehicle doesn't roll anywhere. So we're going to use one of these wheel chocks. These rubber wheel chocks, one is going to go behind the wheel, one's going to go in front of the wheel. Just have to do it on one side so the vehicle can't move anywhere. Over here, this is the control panel for this lift. There's a switch over here that you have to turn so the little green light comes on, and then you can hit the raise button over here. So we're going to hit the raise button until the vehicle's up high enough that we can lift it up, get underneath. You do have to watch out for clearances here. We do have some things up here you have to be careful of. I'm not going to go that high, so I'm not really concerned, but again, if you're going to go all the way up, you need to watch that. So I'm going to go underneath the front of the vehicle and take a look at the jacking mechanism on this lift. So this piece here actually slides out. So what we're going to do is pull it out and take a look at setting up the pads on this lift. So there's actually two pads on it. This part right here that spins around. We're going to just slide this out and put it underneath something solid underneath the front suspension. And again, you'll see that more in person. I'm actually going to use this little piece here and put that up. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to put that like that. Okay, so I actually popped this little part out of the center, makes it go up a little higher. Same thing on this side. I'm going to position that underneath. Okay, underneath the control arm, which is this heavy metal piece here. Now, in order to use this lift, after you have the arms set up properly, there's actually 3 levers in the front. One says lower, raise. And then if you look at this side, there's another one that says lower and raise. And the one in the middle says release and engage. In order to lift this up, you're going to have to use 2 hands, one on this one and one on that one at the same time. So I'm just going to lift that up. And you can actually see the vehicle lifting up right now. So once you lift it up off the ground, as you can see here, both wheels are off the ground. That's basically all you want to do. This right here says engaged. If I want to lower this down now, I have to flip it over to here, which will allow it to lower. So I'm going to just raise this a little higher. Okay, until that's locked. All right, at this point, I'm going to lower the whole lift down a little because right now it's kind of up in the air pretty high. If we want to lower it, we need to turn the key again so the green light is on, and you're going to hit the lower button. Now, it actually goes up a little before it goes down. You can see, and you always want to make sure there's nothing underneath the lift, no people, no tools, as you lower it down. And again, you're going to be able to practice with this when we get back into the shop. So I'm just bringing it down a little way so I can kind of work on this wheel here without being real high up. Next thing we want to do is we're going to take off the wheel cover. So we're going to get a screwdriver. Just grab a screwdriver. Okay, so we're going to need a regular slotted screwdriver. And most wheel covers will have like a little slot, like one of these right here, that you're going to put the screwdriver into. And then you just kind of give it a twist. And what that does is it releases it. You can see what's happening there. You just want to pull it off. Okay, so once you take that off, we just put it down on the lift. Now you can see all the lug nuts here. On this truck, there's 6, but most cars have 2, or actually 4 or 5 lug nuts. If you have a larger vehicle, could have 6, could have 8 lug nuts. The one in the middle doesn't count as a lug nut. That's part of your axle. So these things coming all around here are your lug nuts. So we're gonna basically take, up on the ceiling, we have air hoses, as you can see here. It's hanging down. I'm gonna grab that and pull it down. Now, if you listen to this, when I pull it down, you'll hear a click. Okay, when it clicks, right there, it'll lock. If you're not on a click, it'll cause it to go back up in there. So you want to pull it down until you hear a click, and then it'll stop right there. Okay, so now the hose is down, it'll stay there. We need to hook up an air tool. We're going to actually use this air gun here. So we're going to take the coupler, which is the end of the air hose. You got to pull this coupler back with your thumb and your index finger, and you're basically going to put it inside here. And with a little force, it's a little hard to do with my camera in my hand. Okay, that locks it onto the air tool. So you can actually just pull on this now, and it shouldn't disconnect. The way this air tool works is there's a trigger right here that you can use your index finger on. You can see what happens there. This has 3 settings on the back, 1, 2, and 3. If we put it on 1, kind of goes at a slower speed. 3, higher speed. Usually I leave it at number 3. Now we need a socket. So we're going to use a special socket to take the lug nuts off. So in this box here, we have all these different size sockets. These are heat-treated steel sockets that basically have a plastic protector on them. But they're stronger than chrome sockets, so you can use them with air tools. So if we come over to the vehicle, what I usually do is I check to see if it's the right size by putting it on and give it a twist like that. Now, this one fits a little loose, but it's pretty close. Like, I can't move that far. If I take the next size up, I'll just show you why this would be the wrong one to use. So we put this on there, and I got all sorts of play there. That's actually gonna damage the lug nut if you try to use this socket. So you want to get the one that fits the tightest. If we go down too small, like this one here is one size smaller than the one we're going to use. If we try to put this on now, it doesn't even fit on the lug nut. So you can't even get that on. So this one here is going to be the right one. And again, you want to test it on one of the lug nuts first. Okay, what I usually do now is we're going to connect it onto our tool. This size drive right here, this square end is 1 inch, or actually it's a 1/2 inch. And if you look at the end of our air tool, this is a 1/2 inch drive. So these guys go together. If you look at this tool, which we're going to be using in a little while, this is 3/8. So if you try to use this larger drive size on here, it doesn't even connect onto there. You have to use a smaller drive size. So I'm going to put this on our air tool. You just want to kind of push it on there, get it lined up. Trying to do this with one hand is always a thrill. Okay, so it should snap on like that. What I usually do is before I use the tool on the vehicle, I want to make sure this is going in the right direction. It's lefty loosey, righty tighty. So it's actually counterclockwise. This has to spin, basically if you look at the tool, it's going to be spinning this way when it's taking it off. So this is actually to your left if you look at it. It's also counterclockwise. This way is tightening, which is turning to the right. So the way you change the direction on this is there's a little button here. You can see with my index finger, I'm pushing it in and out. On this particular tool, one way would be that, one way would be that. So if I push it in, it's reversing it. If I push it out, it's going forward. So I want to reverse it, which is going to allow the lug nut to come off. What you can do is put your hand on here lightly and hit the trigger and see if it's spinning in the right direction. Okay. Again, you want to see if it's turning the right way. Right now it's turning counterclockwise, so that's what we want. So I'm going to put it on each one of these, and that basically takes the lug nut off. Now, what we use in our class to save all our parts so we don't lose nuts and bolts and stuff like that is magnetic trays. So let me show you where our magnetic trays are. So over here on this cabinet, you'll see a couple lights up here, and then there's all these magnetic trays. We're going to grab one of these and bring it over to the lift with us. And what this does is, as you take off each lug nut now, you can put the lug nut in the magnetic tray so you don't lose them. You don't want to put them on the floor. You don't want to put them on the lift. Put them in the magnetic tray like that so we don't lose them. Okay, so we're going to put each one in there. And that one fell on the ground. Okay, this one we're going to put in the tray. And then this is the last one here. Okay, and we're going to put that in the tray. Grab the one that fell on the floor. Oops. Okay, I'll put that in the tray. So we should have 6 in there. So you can see that we have 6. All the lug nuts are off now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the tire off, because again, it's off the ground. If you look underneath here, you can see it's off the lift. And we're going to just pull this off and put it on the floor. So let me just lift this up for a second. Kind of heavy. All right, once we move that out of the way, okay, so you can see now I have the tire off the vehicle. This is what you're going to see behind the tire. Basically what you have here is your studs for your lug nuts. You can see there's 6 of those. This component here behind the wheel is your rotor. And if I turn it, you can actually see that it rotates with the wheel studs, which is actually part of the hub. This here is the caliper, which we mentioned last time. This is part of your brake system. Inside your caliper are brake pads. So this is the top of one brake pad. And on the other side, you can't really see it through here, but I can feel it. On the back side is another brake pad. Here's your bleeder screw that we were talking about, how to get the air out of the system. This here is your fluid. This is the hose that goes into the caliper. If you follow that up, this is something you want to inspect. You want to see if there's any cracks or anything in this rubber hose, or any leaking of brake fluid. So we would take a light, let me grab a light, and just examine the hose to make sure there isn't any brake fluid coming out. So we have a nice bright light here, as you can see. So we're gonna bring that over to our components so you can actually really see the brake hose real good. And again, you want to look at both ends all the way up to this part right here where it goes up to the steel line. And you want to see if you see any liquid brake fluid. So that looks pretty dry to me all the way from one end to the other. I don't see any cracks either. And again, you'd actually see cracks in the rubber. All right, now if I want to take the caliper off, we're going to have to push the brake pads inward with a C-clamp. And this is what a C-clamp looks like. This tool here is going to be used to basically push the pistons in of the caliper So we actually, if you look at this end of the caliper, this opening right here, we're gonna put one end of the C-clamp inside there like that, as you can see. The other end's gonna go in the back of the caliper, and we're just gonna start tightening this. Let me just get it started and then I'll show you what it looks like. Again, I can't do this with one hand. All right, so you can see right now that I've put the C-clamp on the back of the caliper. You can see with the light where I'm at with that. And then the other end of the C-clamp is going right inside the top of the brake pad through the opening in the caliper. Now, as I tighten this up, it actually pushes the pad inward a little. If you look here, you can actually see something happening right here. As I tighten this, that gap is going to get bigger because I'm actually pushing the pad backwards a little. Now I'm loosening it up. There's actually two openings, so I'm just going to move the C-clamp down to this other opening. Let me put this down for a second. We're going to tighten that up. So now I'm on the bottom one, just tightening that up a little. Okay, at this point, I moved it back far enough that I think I can get the caliper off with no problem. Now there's actually two bolts that hold the caliper on. If you look in the back here, this one bolt up top here, you can see it in the picture right there where my finger is. That's one of the hold down bolts or mounting bolts. And then down here is the other one. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna get a socket. So here's all our sockets here. We wanna find one that's gonna fit on that bolt. So we'll take this one here. This one here says 18 on it. And that's the size in millimeters. So the size of the socket is 18 millimeters. We're gonna come over to the vehicle and put that right on here. And it's a little small. So right now it won't fit on that. So I'm gonna try 19, which is one size up. And that fits good. So right now I have a 19 millimeter. Now what I'm gonna have to do is loosen these two up. Now we can use a ratchet. One of the tools I'm gonna show you here is an air ratchet, which makes the job a little quicker. This tool right here, this is an air powered tool. You can also use, let me show you what a regular ratchet would look like. So up on our tool board in our shop, we have all these different tools that you guys are gonna learn about. And over here we have, these are ratchets right here. These are manually operated ratchets instead of using air. So let me use this one for this. Okay, so we'll hook this. This connects onto the 3H drive. This is a 3H drive socket. So if you look at the back here, that square there is the same size as the square on the ratchet. This just pushes onto that, so they lock together. And we put this on the bolt that we want to loosen. And usually these are pretty tight. So again, we have to make sure we're turning it the right way. This is facing backwards. So I'm gonna actually be going down on this. Let's see if I can get that loose. May have to put the phone down. Let's see. All right, give me a second. We'll put the phone down for a second, get that loosened up. All right, so I'm gonna need, because that's not really moving, we're gonna use a larger ratchet. So what you need in this case is some more leverage. And instead of using a short ratchet like one of these here, we can use one of these longer ones. We'll try this one and see if that works better. Those bolts are on there pretty tight, so sometimes you need to use some real good force. Let me put the phone down for a second again. Okay, and that seemed to work. All right, so at this point, I kind of broke it loose. And as you can see, when I turn this, a ratchet works like one way it's loosening, the other way it's ratcheting backwards. Okay, and once it's a little loose, I can use my fingers just to loosen this all the way. I'm gonna get the bottom one now. Try to do that on the phone. Okay, we're on the bottom bolt now. Okay. And that moved. Okay, so it looks like that one's broken loose. So I'm gonna loosen that up with my fingers. Okay, and we're gonna put this in the magnetic tray so we don't lose it. Okay, so this is gonna go in our tray with the other stuff. Now, before I take the other bolt out, hanging up over in this part of the shop here, we have these little bungee cords. You'll see them up here, these little rubber bungee cords. I'll show you what we're gonna use this for. That caliper is heavy. You don't wanna hang it by the rubber hose. So what you need to do is once we take this last bolt out, we're gonna hang it by the bungee cord. I'll show you how you do that. Okay, so once I pull that other bolt out, I'm gonna put that in our magnetic tray. I'm gonna lift this caliper off, as you can see here. Now, some technicians and mechanics will put the caliper on the top like that and just kind of let it sit there. I need to take some more stuff out, so I'm not gonna be able to just leave it there. Plus, if you hit anything under here, it might fall off, and then it's gonna pull on this rubber hose because it's gonna fall, and that's the only thing that's holding it right now. So what you can do with the bungee cord is hook one end of your caliper with that, and basically hang it on something. So what I usually do is let's see, I'll show you in a second. I'll stick it through this coil right here. Okay, so I'll show you what I did. All right, so basically I kind of ran it through this coil, and I have the caliper kind of dangling by that rubber strap now instead of the hose, so it won't get damaged. Always look inside, and I actually see a little leakage here around my piston. It's probably not a good sign. What that typically means is that the seal on the caliper piston is starting to leak. It's not coming out a lot, but it is kind of seeping through there. So I'm gonna clean that up and then keep taking a look at it, but could be a problem with the inside of the caliper. Over time, it's definitely leaking there a little. So if you see this, you have a couple choices. Either you can replace the caliper with a rebuilt caliper, or you can rebuild your existing caliper. This one's not really that old, so it's a little concerning. All right, these are the brake pads here. I'm gonna pop one of them out so we can take a look at them. Now, as far as brake pads are concerned, one of these usually has a wear indicator on it, which tells me how much material, but I can see by the thickness of this brake pad that I have a lot of material. Now, we actually have a gauge over in the shop on this side of the shop. We're gonna come over here. We have our tool cabinet. Let's see. Let me unlock it. Okay, so inside our tool cabinet, we have some brake tools. Let me grab that one. Let me put the phone down for a second. Okay, once we open that up, it's this tool here that's like red, yellow, and green. This is actually for checking your brake pad thickness. And the way we're going to use this, if you come over to the brake pad, you want to see which one matches up to the thickness of the gauge here. So if we take the brake pad that we just took off and we look at the thickness, so basically what we can do is take this and lay it on here. Maybe this one here. And that looks like about the same thickness. You can see this one's a lot thinner. This one, you get even thinner. So if somebody says you need brakes, they should be like either the red one, which is really thin, or this red one. Yellow is kind of getting there. The greens are all considered good. So if your brake pad, you can see that part of the brake pad is that thick, then it's probably this one right here. They would tell you that the gauge here says 8 millimeters. So they would say you have 8 millimeters of pad left. And the reds are like 2. So this is like 2 millimeters. So that's pretty small. So that pad looks pretty good. The other pad, which is on the inner side of this, is also pretty thick. So if we look at the gauge on that one, so again, we'll just kind of like set it on the side here. Let's see. You can see it's like that, or maybe even this one. Lots of material left on that. Plus, if you look at the end here, I don't know if you can see it real good. See that little metal tab sticking up? The pad has to wear down that far before that starts scraping on that. And when it starts scraping on that little metal thing, it'll start making a squeal sound. And that's telling the driver that we're pretty close to needing to replace our brake pads. All right, so at this point, we have our rotor in the center here. What you would have to do, if you wanted to take the rotor off, you would have to take the mounting bracket off. That's this bracket that you see right here that the rotor mounts in, and there's actually 2 more bolts that have to come out to get that off. These 2 bolts right down in here. So we're gonna remove that. And again, that would be only if you're replacing the rotor, or you had to machine the rotor, or those would really be the only 2 reasons that you would take that off. Typically, most technicians will either replace the rotors, or they'll resurface the rotors if they're going to replace the brake pads. I'm just putting another glove on here. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do, get the right size socket. I believe it's a different size. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. So we had our 19. It's actually the same size. Okay. Okay, we're loosening up the bottom one. Taking the bolt out. Okay, again, with these bolts, you want to put them in the tray so you don't lose them. I'm going to take this upper bolt out, which is up here, using our ratchet. Yeah, again, they're very tight. Okay. Okay, so I'll pull this bolt out. Trying to hand thread it out, but it's a little tight, so I'm using our ratchet again. All right, just that off. Okay, so again, we're going to put the bolt in the tray. Here's our mounting bracket that we just took off. Okay, so we're going to put that down here. These are sliders that they give you with the new brake pads. I'm just going to stick that back inside there temporarily. Okay. All right, so at this point, with the caliper off and the mounting bracket off, we should be able to pull our rotor off. Okay, the whole rotor comes off. I'll put that on the bench here. So now what you see on the car, or the truck in this case, is the hub. So this part here, this surface is what your rotor rides up against. This could actually be damaged if you hit a curb hard enough. You could actually bend this, and there's actually a series of bolts back here that you have to take out to remove that. And you can take this whole hub off. You also have to take this large nut off in the middle. We're going to show you that in another video. But let's look at the rotor for a second. The rotor surface looks pretty good because I recently replaced these brake pads. So they're in pretty good shape. I remember when I did the brakes, I replaced the rotors with them because they had some good mileage on them, and they actually wore down. And it's basically what happens to the rotors. They get thinner as the material wears off. And what the manufacturer tells you is what the minimum thickness should be on the rotor. Let me see where our specification is on this rotor. There. Okay, I don't see it. Okay, it's inside. It looks like it's maybe inside this part of the rotor. All right, hold on. I'm going to look it up. Hold on.